Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whatever time it is that you're watching this. Today, I want us to address something called an audit. And I think this is a term that really sends that cold feeling, especially to the auditee. It's because we are used to what? We are used to financial audits that are not very friendly, and especially if it is KRA auditing you. So I think the word audit has been given this connotation that it is not a very good thing. But I want to talk about a safety audit, an occupational health and safety audit, and just give you the difference of what we do as audit, your safety, as opposed to the other audits that I saw and all these other audits that actually make people run around arranging files and doing a lot of things. Let me just bring it probably by introduction that when you're talking about occupational safety and health and the way it is approached in Kenya, I think I've mentioned before it is a union of three. And this is the employer, the employee, and the government. If these three people collaborate to create a safe working environment, then an audit is basically just coming to check that you've actually done up to the standards required. Now, the standards required could either be entrenched in the law or within the business standards. And I'll give an example. For multinationals, you'll find that most of their safety standards are actually way higher than our local requirements under the law. And therefore, when they are doing their safety audit, their audit will be a bit deeper because they're looking at other things that probably are not in the law. And when you're looking at complying with the law, and I'll tell you, complying with the law is just the simplest form of managing safety in your workplace. Because the law has two ways. In certain areas, it advises you. It actually leaves it to your discretion. Like when the law says the employer shall do everything in their power to keep their employees safe, the law is basically telling you, look at your processes, look at your capacity, and do everything in your power to be able to keep your people safe. But there are certain areas the law is very prescriptive. It gives you a prescription and tells you that for employees exceeding 20, you shall form a health and safety committee. So basically there the law is telling you, if your numbers exceed 20, then forming a safety committee is not an option. They're not telling you it's a good idea, they're telling you it's a requirement. And so when you look at the law and the occupational safety and health audits, all the audits are coming to do is confirming that what is written in the law is basically what you've done, or rather what is written in your internal standards is basically what you have done. And I'll just break down the audits that we do under occupational safety and health. Number one, we have the OSHA audit, Occupational Safety and Health Audit. It is anchored in Section 6 of the Occupational Safety and Health Act. No, it's actually anchored in Section 11 of Occupational Safety and Health Act of 2007, where it says that an occupier shall cause an audit to be conducted. Now, cause an audit means you're not doing it yourself. You need someone to come and do it from outside. And who is this someone? We call them an approved person. Like myself and the team at Safepro, we are what we call approved person to carry out an occupational safety and health audit in your workplace. The second audit is what we call the fire safety audit. In this audit, this is an audit that is required under the fire risk reduction rules. Rule number 36 requires that every 12 months, you shall carry out a fire safety audit. Now, just to take you back to the rule that is requiring you to, the rules, they are called the fire risk reduction rules. Just by the name, it is fire risk reduction. What are you doing to reduce the risk of fire in your workplace? And it will talk about the provision of extinguishers, capacity building for your people to be able to fight fires, provision of exits in case you have a fire, how do people evacuate, and even means of summoning for help in terms of calling the fire brigade, in terms of even being able to call the ambulance and the police to respond to this particular issue. So the fire risk reduction rules are just rules from number 1 to 36 telling you rule number 1, what must you do? Rule number 2, what to do. This is to help you reduce the risk of fire in your workplace. And who does that? It is not, again, it's not done internally. It is also done by someone external, someone we call a fire safety auditor, approved by the Directorate of Occupational Safety and Health Services. And in Safepro, we have a fire safety auditor. So basically, we can actually do that for you. Then we have the third audit, which you must carry out, and it is called a risk assessment. Now, a risk assessment is the most interesting one because under Section 6.3 and 6.4 of OSHA 2007, you are required to carry out a risk assessment of all your operations and submit a copy to the director. This is the only audit you can actually do it yourself as an employer. But where you lack capacity to do the risk assessment, then we also come in and help you to do that risk assessment, to basically look at all your activities. And in a risk assessment, what are we saying? We are saying, what is it that we do? What hazards are present in the workplace? What can happen to our people? And if it was to happen, how bad would it be? And then after you ask yourself those 4 questions, you now answer the question, what have we done about it and what more is required to be done so that our people are safe? So in a risk assessment, you can actually carry it out internally, or you can call us to come and do it for you. It is not necessarily that it must be done by someone from outside. However, because of capacity, we still advise get an external eye. And why am I saying this? You could be living in your house with cobwebs, but you're used to them. You're okay with them. But an external eye is able to see the cobwebs and relate them to the risk of health and even the accumulation of dust and the issue of spiders and all these other things that for you would actually not be a bother. But an external eye is able to see things that you are already okay with, things you're already complicit with. An external eye is able to see. So I've talked about 3 audits: the Occupational Safety and Health Audit, Section 11 of OSHA, the Fire Risk Reduction Rules, Rule 36, that is a fire safety audit, and the risk assessment under Section 6.3 and 6.4. Then, after we've done this, have you heard the term sick building? There are these workplaces where guys are always sick. Huyu akitoka, kesho mwingine hayuko. People are always absent because they have homas, they have chest problems, they have I don't know what. So what could be happening? And I want you even to go and just check a term we call a sick building. And I'm not joking. A building can be sick. All right? And it means the people in this building are always ill. What could be happening? And I'll tell you this. Some very important parameters. Number 1, lighting. You all know that lighting, just the normal light, is already a good disinfectant. So if you are in a room that has poor lighting, chances that you're growing mold on the wall are very high. If you have a building that is poorly ventilated, chances are also high that the accumulation of some of the toxic gases like carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, if there are any burning processes in the building, and other parameters within the air that are supposed to be monitored are off. And therefore, your people will always be falling sick one after another. And you're wondering what is happening. You actually think guys are just getting an excuse not to come to work. But in reality, the air quality is off. How do you know if the air quality in your workplace is okay? Call us at Safepro. There's something we call hygiene measurements. We'll measure the indoor air quality and be able to tell you if it is CO2 levels, what are the levels that are required under international and local standards? And if they are high, what must you do? If it is the carbon monoxide levels, how are they? If it is the oxygen levels, the dust levels. Some of us are inhaling dust continuously. Maybe you're next to the highway and your windows are always open. So your people are always exposed to dust and fumes. In fact, sometimes I really pity even our traffic officers. WHO, years back, actually confirmed that diesel fumes are a causative factor of lung cancer. What does that mean to the people who operate next to the road? What does that mean to that traffic officer who reports at 5 a.m. at a busy intersection of the road, just making sure that you are all flowing smoothly, and there are vehicles passing by, emitting a big, huge cloud of black smoke from diesel engines? And that is where your office also is, next to the road. So basically what we are saying is that these are parameters we can measure. We can measure your air quality. We can also measure the light levels. And why measure the light level? If it is little, you're straining. If it is too much, you are being exposed to too much light. And what is the risk of that? Occupational cataract. Go and check it out, that you could actually be losing your ability to see well because of too much light in the workplace or little light in the workplace. I want you to take a survey in your office, and especially for people who stare at display screen equipment, and I'm talking about monitors, computer screens. Take a survey in your office. After a long day of working, how many of you actually experience a headache at the end of the day? And most of you could be thinking, oh, I overthought. Hakuna kitu kama hiyo. You're actually not even using full capacity or full potential of how much you can think. But in reality, it is exposure to the lighting in the workplace that is actually causing you to start feeling the headaches. And it's basically the body trying to tell you something is off, right? It is your body trying to send a signal. Something is off. Look at it, boss. The lighting is too much or the lighting is too little. We need to do something about it. So for that, there's something we call an Illuminance Survey, or in other words, a lighting survey. And in a lighting survey, all we do is come and measure the light levels, how much light is falling on your desk, and because whatever is falling on your working surface is basically what is going into your eye. Does it exceed the international standards or is it within the standards? And it is also dependent on how much attention you're paying. For someone who is doing fine artwork, they need more light than someone who is doing general walkabout in the walkway. Because in a walkway, you'd be looking at around 50 lux, but for office work, you'd be looking at between 400 to 700. For fine working, you'd be looking at up to 900 lux. But of course, we'll explain that in a later video. But basically what we're saying is lighting is very important. So I've talked to you about air, I've talked to you about the lighting. Then there's another parameter that is also very important, the noise levels. Because noise is an energy. And this energy, the way it interacts with your eardrum, can determine how long you'll be able to hear, especially after retirement, and even during your working. Because even as we speak, with the emergence of call centers, because of business process outsourcing and all these telcos and the betting companies, most of our young people today are using a headset. What that means is that their eardrum is constantly under activation. And needless to say, if you don't know someone who has already started losing their hearing, you've heard a story about someone who lost their hearing ability. And if you've not heard, I want you to go to the internet and search how many cases, even in Kenya, we have of people who are already in court trying to chase compensation because they lost their ability to hear. How did that happen? Exposure to noise. We call it occupational deafness. People are actually losing their ability to hear because of exposure to occupational noise. Those people working with a grinder, needless to say, theirs is actually way above the limits. Those people working with headsets, it is an issue even of the time of exposure. And if you don't look at these things, eventually, you're going to have a lot of legal cases, you're going to have a lot of people losing their ability to hear because you're not paying attention. And the body will normally keep telling you something is off. So noise, light, air. The last thing I want to address is the issue of ergonomics within the workplace. This is what we call an ergonomic survey. An ergonomic survey basically just comes and checks how are you people sitting in the office. It's not even an issue because I've noticed most of you have very good furniture. In fact, most of the workplaces I've audited, you have very, very good furniture. However, your people are still slouching forward, they're still bending their neck. And this happens a lot, especially for laptop users. Because if you're using a laptop, it means that it is on your desk and therefore you have to bend forward. What do I advise? Get a monitor screen so that you mirror whatever is on the laptop to this screen so that you always stay upright. Because basically, the top of the screen should be somewhere on top of your eye view. The moment you're bending, you're basically causing a strain on a particular part of your spine. And needless to say, take a survey in your office on how many people right now are having a back pain or a neck pain because of having seated the whole day yesterday and sitting in the wrong posture. Most of you, when you're typing, the edge of your hand is actually seated on the edge of the desk. That is wrong. Adjust your armrest. If your chair has an armrest, let your arm rest on the armrest. Then allow the wrist to be free to actually operate the mouse without resting your hand using the edge of your wrist. And of course, soon I'll be doing a demo on how to sit properly, how to adjust your chair, how to adjust basically your desk even as you're working so that you're able to sit comfortably in a neutral posture. And lastly, for those people who keep cartons under your chair, it means You have to create some space for you to sit, and therefore you're twisting your torso to be able to continue working properly. Clear every item under your desk so that you're able to also sit in a neutral posture. Kwa wale wetu ambao ni wafupi, desks are made in a standard height. Right? It's not likely that you're going to buy a desk that is shorter. So normally, you'll find yourself adjusting your chair higher so that you're able to reach the top of the surface. What does that do? Your feet are left dangling. If not dangling, then you have to fold your feet back and step on the feet of the chair, or rather the wheels of the chair. What am I simply saying? Ask your employer to give you a footstool so that your feet can rest on a footstool and you're able to sit in a neutral posture. But to be able to know that, why don't you call us to come and do an ergonomic survey, to come and do a lighting survey, to come and do an indoor air quality measurement in your workplace, to come and do a fire safety and risk assessment audit. Call us, DM us, email us about your needs, and you'll be able to address that. And this is how to check, first of all, even if the auditor is legit. Because I'm getting a lot of complaints from people saying, we are getting a lot of proposals from quacks. Go to www.doshmis.dosh.go.ke. There is a list of approved persons. You'll find my name there, James Kinuthia, approved as a fire safety auditor, an AQM, and an OSHA auditor. If it is trainings, you'll find Safepro listed as a trainer in provider for first aid, for OSHA, and for fire safety. If the provider you have is not appearing on all those, that is either a broker or a quack. Kick them out. Talk to us and we'll be able to help you further. Thank you.